Education starts and ends at home. School should be the icing and not the cake. And if the cake is in fact the school, then you need to make sure it's not rotted from the inside out. Starting a business should not be something that's hard for you, even if you need to scale your business. Do me a favor right now. Shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word coach at The Business Bully, and we'll see what we can make happen for you. I promise you, I don't say things to hear myself talk. If this was a situation where I didn't have anything to say, I wouldn't say anything. But didn't I tell you about this education system and how it's lackluster? There's a young lady, and she said she literally got out of high school, graduated with honors, got a full scholarship, and she can't read or write. This is the problem. We don't talk about how the education system is failing our children, because anytime I say something, well, you need the education. Oh, Dave, you just don't know what you're talking about. Everybody has the education. And even you said that people without an education don't make as much as people with an education. Yeah, those things can be true. I don't know if you know this or not, but there's this concept that two things can be right at the same time. Yes, you can make more money with a college education by and large than without, but also there's this thing that happens with K through 12 called No Child Left Behind, where they're not testing you to see how well you read and write or how well you compute mathematically. They're just testing you to meet a state standard so that they can get some money and pass you along. This should not be a situation where a kid is in a bad neighborhood with an underfunded school. No, she was in a good neighborhood with a good school, came from a good home, and went to a great college that gave her a scholarship, and she could not read. To put this another way, you would rather take Fantasia Barrino or Floyd Mayweather in a reading contest than this young lady who is educated. Well, at least on paper. But the reason that this continues to happen, especially here in America, is because we get caught up on the celebration. Oh, my baby. Oh, my baby graduated. Oh, Lord, we've been working so hard for it. Have you, though? Can you name all your children's teachers without having to look it up? Have you been to a school board meeting to see what's happening? Do you ever demand from your city council person or your school board or your mayor where your tax dollars are going when it comes to education? Do you have any idea what's going on with the funding on a state level? Do you realize that right now there is a shortage of teachers because people don't want to teach in a war zone? People don't want to teach in a psychological war zone either, meaning that you can't say this to a kid. You can't. It sounds like a Lil Wayne song. And you can't do this and you don't do that. David Banner. But what I'm saying to you is you got to understand that this isn't a one-off. This happens every day. I know people that I went to college with who couldn't read. Most of them ran with a ball, but they couldn't read. I know people who were on scholarship, and this is in the 90s, who also were functionally illiterate. I have put people into syndication who I know for a fact are functionally illiterate, but would love to tell you how much they went to college. They love to talk about how they went to college. I know New York Times best-selling authors who can't read a lick, and I'm still trying to figure out how they wrote that book. I know, but I digress. The education system needs an overhaul, and why this is important is because aside from what's happening at home, the number one influence over your child is the amount of education that they get. Dr. Claude Anderson has talked about the importance of having a quality education. Dr. George Fraser has talked about how important it is to build wealth so that your child can be properly educated. But now the proper education has to be called into question because it can't be that proper if we've got people getting full scholarships that can't string together two sentences. When are you going to start waking up from whatever haze you're in, from whatever oppression Olympics you think you're running, and start getting the gold medal and being a parent that shows up for their kid, that quizzes their kid at home, that does this thing? And before you say, well, I do that, not enough of us do. Because when you look at the test scores and when you look at what's happening to our young people, it's obvious that something is failing, something is missing, and we're not doing enough of a job. And I've said this before, if you don't own the fact that you own the problem, you cannot bitch about how the solution is doled out. The only way for us to solve our problems is for us to acknowledge that we have the problem in the first place and to go and fix it. There should never be a situation where a kid has been given to the state, because that's what you do when you give your children to public school. You give them to the state. Look up the legal term in loco parentis. It means that you give up a part of your parental rights from the hours of 7 a.m. until school closes to the state. The state, in effect, becomes that child's parent. So maybe you need to have a parent-to-parent conference instead of a parent-teacher conference where you just found out that Raheem got an A or Stacy got a B+ and you're so happy because chemistry is hard. And really find out what they're learning and what they're not learning. And then how much time are you spending with your children making sure they unlearn the indoctrination that is given to them by the public school system? Probably not enough if you're being honest, but we're not honest about this. We think that that diploma is some type of Willy Wonka golden ticket. And I'm sorry to break it to you, Grandpa Joe, those days are over with and you're not going to get a chocolate factory at the end of this. Come with me and you'll be in a world of full accountability. I know y'all don't like to be there, but if I got to drag you kicking and screaming, that's what I'll do. There should never be a situation where you don't know what's going on with your kid when you give them over to the state. Education starts and ends at home. School should be the icing and not the cake. And if the cake is in fact the school, then you need to make sure it's not rotted from the inside out. If you've got any questions you want to throw at me, you can always do the whole Ask Dave Anderson thing by sending me an email at dave@businessbullyshow.com. I'll see you next time.